Hello there and welcome back to my channel, or if this is the first video of mine you are seeing, then welcome. So the Aspyn Ovard and Tarte Eyeshadow palette is back. Now just a couple of notes here. Now this palette does reflect, so I'm going to try to hold the palettes without me completely blinding you so you can see the shades, and the packaging is absolutely stunning. Now some notes on this palette. When this palette originally was a thing so many years ago, I was not involved in like the beauty community or anything. So by the time I got more involved with makeup and stuff, this palette had already made its way out. However, I had seen so many collection videos and declutter videos in the past where people would talk about this palette and say it was one of their favorites. They hope that it's brought back. They don't know why Tarte got rid of it and everything. But apparently Tarte listened, and it's been, I guess, so many years, but they did end up bringing this palette back. I also am not familiar with Aspyn Ovard. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. I'm not sure who she is, so I'm not judging this palette based on her or anything because I don't know who she is. I'm assuming she is a content creator, but I don't know, and I'm not judging this palette based on her because I don't know her. So we're just judging this based on the eyeshadow palette and its performance. I thought about doing at least, I said 2 looks, but honestly some of these shades look very similar to each other, so it might be a palette where I just end up doing 1 look, but we're going to see. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit, and we are going to do some live swatches together, so let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, I'm first going to start out with the blush and the highlighter. Oh, that blush feels really soft and chunky. And the blush is Made You Blush, and the highlighter is Pure Soul. So there's the blush and the highlighter. Wow, very pretty. That blush is really chunky, kind of like when I was swatching it, so it is one of those that is very softly pressed. So I just wanted to make a note of that, especially if you're like me and you didn't have the original, because I don't know how this might compare to the original. I'm assuming it's the same palette. Okay, so the way I'm going to do, I'm just going to go across row by row. I'm not holding this palette up because it's just so reflective. So I'm going to start with the shade Brilliance and then go to Unbothered and then Endless Summer. Okay, that's Brilliance. It's pretty. Then we have Unbothered and Endless Summer. Really pretty shades so far. Okay, the next row is Mother, Heart of Gold, and Road Trip. They are very soft eyeshadows, like the matte shades when you touch them. They're very soft. So we have Mother, Heart of Gold, wow, and Road Trip. Kind of see them. I should have done them on my arm, I guess, like I usually do, but I'm just trying something new. If it doesn't work out, then I can definitely change it in the next time I do any kind of swatch video. Okay, then we have Single Life, Tea Time, and Wanderlust. Okay, so Single Life, which is basically like my skin tone, so that's not going to show up too much on me. Then we have Tea Time. And then we have Wanderlust. And there's the whole palette swatched out, including the 2 face steps. It's a really pretty palette, like a very everyday neutral palette. Very pretty. Okay, so I'm going to take the shade Single Life on a blending brush from e.l.f. Now this is basically like my skin tones, so the only thing I'm going to do is apply this all over my lid to really set my eyeshadow primer, which I'm wearing the Milani one today. I don't know, that did add, well, maybe a slight bit of pigment. Well, I don't know, probably not. But this is just a setter shade for me. But I like it when palettes have this kind of shade for me to be able to do this step. These shades are very soft, so like when I'm tapping my brush in, a lot comes up on the brush. I'm just curious, did any of you have this eyeshadow palette? like when it was first a thing. Maybe you were more involved in the beauty world then when this palette was originally released. I wasn't. So by the time I came along, this palette was already, I think it was already gone, or it was making its way out and I just didn't know about it or something. But I always kind of regret that I didn't ever get a chance to try it, because I remember seeing several creators say that it was one of their favorites and they hate that it's gone, you can no longer get it, and I do love the packaging. Those flowers on the packaging are right up my alley because I love flowers. It reminds me of spring, which I've mentioned many times that spring is my favorite. In fact, my video that went up this past Monday was a spring-inspired makeup look. Okay, I don't know if this shade is going to show up too much on my eye. We're going to find out. So I'm going to take a Sigma E24 into the shade Mother. But if not, then I'm going to go into Unbothered. But I'm going to start with this shade. Some of it is absolutely coming up on the brush. So let me run that into my crease. Oh yeah, that's showing up beautifully. It's really a soft shade. I think that's one thing that I like about this palette is it's soft. I've mentioned many times that I love soft eyeshadow. I'm not really into heavy eyeshadow looks on myself. I just like simple eye looks. So this palette is honestly right up my alley as far as that is concerned because it's soft. Now if you like a little bit more intense, I don't know how much you're going to get that from this particular palette. Maybe on the row that has the deepest shades, you might can kind of get a more, well, smokier or more glam eye look if you want. But now for me, the softer the better. This palette's performing just as well as any of the Tarte palettes I've ever used. If you are familiar with Tarte's formula, then, I mean, this is performing just as beautifully. I always loved working with their formula because it's easy. To me, their shades are really easy to blend out. They're very simple. I've always loved their eyeshadow palettes for that reason. And the fact that they're usually, well, they're all neutral, which is what I love. Okay, so we are going to go in to this Unbothered shade using the same brush. There is a mirror, by the way, in this palette, but I have yet to take the little film off of it. And I don't know if I am, honestly. I might just leave it off, but we're going to deepen this crease a little bit with this shade. Not much. I did not pick up a lot of that shade. I don't know. I think with a palette like this, I'd rather keep the film on just in case, because I know accidents can happen with the mirror. I'll probably eventually pull it off, but right now I'm just going to leave it be. Yeah, these shades are blending beautifully together. No struggles whatsoever. But you know, I feel like if you have probably any of Tarte's eyeshadow palettes, then you already have these shades. So, definitely don't feel pressured. Of course, I know all of you know that, but I mean, I guess I'm speaking from my own experience too, because I know there are many times where, and I mean, I did it with this eyeshadow palette. I'll see palettes that maybe were once a very loved eyeshadow palette, and then they bring them back, like they did this one, or like they did with the Urban Decay Naked palette and all that, and I feel like, oh, I need to see for myself. And I did absolutely get, yeah, I got the palette, and I don't regret it. So far, no, I'm not regretting anything because I'm a neutral person. I love neutral eyeshadows. That's my favorite. So this is not a palette that's, not going to be not used for that reason, because it's neutral and I like these types of tones for every day. But if you have their palettes, then more than likely you have this exact same palette already in one of those. And if you have that really large Full Bloom eyeshadow palette that they released maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, it was limited edition. Probably all of these shades are in there. Maybe you're on a no-buy or a low-buy, but you feel like, I really want that palette, but I don't want to break that. I'm sure you have these shades a million times over in your collection if you have a lot of neutrals. On that same brush, I'm going to take the shade Tea Time. I'm just trying to honestly use as many shades as possible in the palette. I don't know yet if I'm going to be doing another look with it. So I'm just going to see what I can do today. And I'm going to stamp this shade out here on this outer, I'll say third of my lid. I'm just going to work with the shades that I kind of want to, and if I see that I want to do another look, then I will absolutely do another look with this palette next. You know, this would be a really good palette to maybe do like a 1 week, 1 palette, just to see what looks you could create with it. Like if you did 5 to 7 looks. But I'm wanting to get this video out. I'm filming this on Monday, and I'm wanting to get this video out on Wednesday. But maybe in the future it'd be a good video to do, like revisiting it sometime in the future. Yeah, these shades are blending out so beautifully, like no issues whatsoever. Whereas I kind of expected that. I've never had issues with Tarte's eyeshadows. I'm going to take the shade Heart of Gold on my finger. I'm wearing these shorter press-ons today, so it'll be really easy to do this. And we're going to place that right here in the center of my lid. I'm trying to just use as many shades as possible. I don't know if I can use all of them. There's 9 shades. I might actually can. We'll see. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to place that in the very center of my lid. Honestly, the palette that I used in a video last week, the NYX Ultimate Warm Neutrals, probably, yeah, I actually created a look very similar to this one, so you definitely can get this look at a more affordable price point, of course. And I'm sure ColourPop, probably their Bare Necessities palette, I know that one right off the top of my head, you probably could recreate this with that palette as well. Any kind of warm neutral palette, you'll be good to go. Okay, then I'm going to go into Endless Summer. And this shade I'm going to place right in here. Yep, I created a very, very similar eye look to this with that NYX Ultimate Warm Neutrals palette. So that's just, you know, a thought. If you like the look of this palette, but maybe you didn't want to purchase it. Now don't get me wrong, it's a very pretty eyeshadow palette. But I also understand that a lot of people are on no buys and low buys, and I'm just trying to think of some palettes off the top of my head that you can get a very similar look with, and you might have those already in your collection. I don't regret this palette one bit because it's beautiful and it's performing just the way Tarte's eyeshadows have always performed for me, but I just want to give a couple of other options as well. Okay, I'm going to take the shade Road Trip on a small angled brush from e.l.f. and I'm going to line my lash line with that on this outer half of my lid. Like, not going all the way across, just kind of going halfway. Went back in with a little bit more, and I'm just going to kind of deepen that up a little bit. Nothing too intense. If you're not new to my channel, then you know me. I like subtle when it comes to makeup. Sometimes I like to have a little bit more fun. Like if you watched my Valentine's Day look, that was just purely for fun. But usually I prefer very subtle makeup. The shade looks really nice and pigmented, and it's building up really well. You know, just something like that. It's very, you know, like I said, subtle. Okay, so I only have 2 more shades in the palette. I'm going to use them on the lower lash line. Okay, so I just have 2 more shades in this palette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do my under eye area. And I'm just going to be taking my NYX Pro Fix Stick Correcting Concealer in the shade Fair. And then over the top, I'm going to take my NYX Bear With Me Concealer Serum. These are just products that are in my everyday makeup drawer. So I'm just trying to use them as much as possible because I will soon be filming for my March everyday makeup drawer. So I'm just trying to use up as many of these as possible. Honestly, this little correcting stick kind of grew on me a little bit. I did kind of give it a hard time, but I'm still not the biggest fan of the shade, but once you put the concealer over the top of it, you don't really notice it, but I wouldn't be opposed to maybe eventually trying it in a new shade, but it's kind of grown on me. That's one of the reasons why I love having like that everyday makeup drawer, because then I can fully test out products that I'm not so sure about. Like I have at least a month that I really have to kind of use them and, you know, see how they work for me. Okay, then I'm just going to take the concealer and just take a little bit on my finger and then pat that under my eye. I need my little mirror here. And see, once I put this over the top of that corrector, it looks completely fine. Okay, so we're going to go into Wanderlust on that small angled brush, and we're going to run that all the way across my lower lash line. Ooh, that's a really pigmented shade. Okay, so I'm going to mostly keep the pigment on this outer half, and then I wipe the brush off, and then I'm going to go back and go all the way across. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over here. Place most of that pigment on this outer half, and then wipe the brush off, and then go across the rest of the way. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that and place it out here. I picked up a lot more on this side, so I need to kind of make that more even. So packing a little bit more, then wiping the brush, and then doing the same thing. And then the last shade in the palette as far as eyeshadow is the shade Brilliance, so let's take that shade right there. And we're going to pop that right here in this inner corner. And then I'm going to also kind of place that shade up in here as well, just to brighten that whole part right there. Okay, so I have used all 9 eyeshadows on my lid and, well, my lower lash line as well. So here is this look. It performs the way that I would expect Tarte eyeshadows to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of my face, except for blush and highlighter, because we do have those in the palette. So I'm going to do all that and I'll be right back. Alright, so I went ahead and did everything else, and just right quick what's on my lips. Of course, all of this will be listed and linked for you below, but I'm wearing my Tower 28 one-liner in the shade Check Me Out, and over the top of that I'm wearing the Flower Beauty lipstick in Spiced Petal, and the e.l.f. Glow Reviver lip oil, the Glimmer finish in the shade Princess Cut, just to create this. And I really like this lip combo. I think it looks really pretty with the eyes. So now we're going to test out this highlighter and blush in this palette. Now I'm going to take a Flawless Face Brush from e.l.f. and we're going to take the highlighter, which is in the shade Pure Soul. Ooh, it reflects so badly. That's the only thing I have against these eyeshadow palettes that have this reflective packaging. Okay, I'm just going to dip once into that and let's see. Ooh, pretty. Now, if you're not new, then you will know I'm not a big highlighter person. But that's really pretty. I'm going to dip into that a little bit more. Let's just see. Let's just build it up. Yeah, that's very pretty. If you love highlighter, you probably really love that shade. Now, there does look like there's sparkle in it a little bit, unless that's just from my eyeshadow. Yeah, maybe a little bit of sparkle flecks in it. So just be mindful of that if you're not into the sparkle. It's not bad and it doesn't bother me, but I know some people don't like that. It's very pretty. Now I like to do my highlighter first and then put the blush on the top of that. That's why I'm going to go ahead and do this. If you had like more of a precise highlighter brush, you probably really could intensify that. Now my face is already a little bit glowy because of the base products I'm using, but that is very pretty. It doesn't look weird or anything. It's laying on my cheek very nicely. I'm gonna zoom you in a little bit so you can see. Hopefully you can see. I don't have like the best camera ever, but I'm hoping you can still see what I'm seeing. Okay, so I'm going to wipe that brush off a little bit on the silicone mat. Not much because it's just highlighter that's on it, so it's not a big deal. And we're going to go into the blush shade, which is Made You Blush. Now, that looks very pigmented. Very pigmented. So I'm going to tap a little bit of that on my hand and then go in. And that's pretty. That's a pretty blush. The only thing about adding products like blush and highlighter to palettes like this is I feel like it's only going to work for certain skin tones. Like, it's not going to work for everybody. Like, I don't see that working for anybody past a medium complexion. And I don't even know if you had a medium skin tone. You might could build it up because it does feel pigmented. And if you can see that? How much kick up comes up into the pan. So you might could build it up. It's a pretty shade, but that's the only thing about these kind of products, including these face steps in these palettes. It's not going to work for everybody. That's a really pretty blush. The tone of it is right up my alley. Now, this whole palette is right up my alley. Now, the highlighter, I can live without the highlighter. It's beautiful, but I'm just not a highlighter person. But in general, this palette is right up my alley. It's soft, it's subtle, it's everyday neutral makeup that I'm obsessed with. So for me, I don't regret this purchase one bit, but you know, you definitely have to look at your own preferences and what you like with makeup and everything. Like, if you like more intense, this definitely probably would not be the palette for you, but you know, I'm just giving my experiences with it. You know, take, of course, everything I say with a grain of salt because everybody will have a different experience, but from my preferences, I think this is a really beautiful, beautiful palette, and I'm glad that I have it in my collection. Now, do I think it's anything extremely spectacular? No. It's beautiful. Yes, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful palette. I didn't struggle one bit. It's Tarte's formula that, you know, that I love, that I know and I love, that, you know, it just works really nicely. But I mean, you can create this type of makeup with probably any neutral palette. Any warm-leaning neutral palette in your collection, you can create a look exactly like this. So while I do like the palette, it is definitely not a necessity by any means, but it is very pretty. I am very impressed with the quality. It's very stunning. I think what I really love the most, and it's got fingerprints all over it, let me wipe it off right quick. The packaging is really what sells this for me. And I know that's kind of dumb in a way, but I mean, when you are paying your money, you do want nice packaging too. The flowers. See, like, this is something I'd love to have like on display. I mean, it's too reflective to have on display with my ring light and stuff, but I just love that packaging because it looks like spring, and I love spring. But I'm happy to have the palette in my collection. I really am. Now, I don't have the original to compare it to or anything, but I do think it's a really pretty palette. I love the blush. The highlighter is very pretty. I'm just not a highlighter person, but it is very pretty. And yeah, you know what? So I think I am going to do one more look with the palette. I know that I've used all the shades here, but I would like to see if I can do something a little bit more, possibly deeper and smokier. I don't know yet if I can or not. That's usually not a style I go for anyway, but I'm going to try something new. So I think I'm going to do one more look, but at least I've used all 9 shades here, and then the 2, of course, face shades as well, which I'm very impressed by. I love that blush shade. However, those shades are not going to work for everybody. That is a con for palettes like this that have face steps included. It's not going to work for everyone. So that's the first look here, so we're going to move on to look number 2. Okay, for look number 2, I'm thinking I want to do something a little bit more maybe smoky, but we'll see how it ends up turning out. So, but first I'm going to take a Sigma E24, and I'm going to go into the shade Mother. Now, the only thing I've done so far is take Single Life and go across my lid. I just use that as a setter shade. And I'm going to run that into my crease. We're just going to start here. I could have started with the deeper shade first, but I don't know. I just kind of like going from like lightest to darkest shade. I guess it just depends on your preference. And just some quick notes from yesterday's look. You know, the shades look really beautiful by the end of the day. The blush, the highlighter, the eyeshadows, everything was still there, still vibrant, nothing muddied like on my eyes or anything. Everything looked really good. Which, I mean, I've come to expect that from Tarte, so nothing out of the ordinary. All right, we're going to take that same shade and we're going to go on to this side over here. I think I might have picked up a little too much, so I'm going to wipe that brush off a little bit and then go back in. Whereas this is a very light shade, and luckily these shades blend out really easily. But as I mentioned in look 1, that's one of the biggest reasons why I do love Tarte eyeshadows, because I just feel like they're very easy to work with. And if you're someone who is like a beginner with eyeshadow, they are a good formula to work with. Same brush, and we're going to take the shade Unbothered. And I'm going to work that shade also into my crease. Just deepening that up slightly as I go. Okay, same thing over here. I'm just deepening up that crease. And just keep layering like the eyeshadows, going from the lightest to the deepest shade. Or you can work the opposite way too if you want. Whatever is easiest for you. Okay, same brush, shade Tea Time. And the exact same thing, we're going to run that right into the crease as well, because the next shade I'm going in with is going to go on the actual lid. I'm just trying to build up the crease. And I'll probably go in more with this shade in just a second when I actually put the deepest matte shade on my lid. Same thing over here. Okay, on a Sigma E54, I'm going to take the shade Road Trip. I could of course kept the same brush that I had been using, but I wanted something a little bit more dense. We're going to pack this all over the lid, really keeping most of that pigment right in here, closer to the lash line and halfway to the lid, or halfway to the crease, I should say. And then I'm going to wipe that brush off, and then I'm going to then place what's left into my crease. I just wanted most of that pigment to be closer to the lash line than I do when you get to the crease. Okay, I'm going to go back to that Sigma E24. I'm going to work around that shade. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Oh, I did not pick up enough of that shade. There we go. Pack that all over the lid, keeping most of the pigment on the bottom half of my lid, and then working what's left on the brush up into my crease. Okay, I am going to add a little bit more of that deeper matte over here because I kind of went in a little bit more darker on this side, so I need to add some to this eye to make it match. Okay, now, I don't know if I want to just leave it matte or if I want to add something over the top. I keep thinking I want to go in to the shade Wanderlust and put that over the top. You know what, maybe I should. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to take the shade Wanderlust. This is optional. If anybody is actually following along with this look, you definitely don't have to do this step. I just want to add something. Yeah, we're going to add that all over the top. It just adds a little something. I don't know if you'll even be able to see it, but in person you can tell that there's a pretty sparkly shade over the top, because this shade does have a little bit of sparkle in it, not like a lot. It's more like a scattered sparkle, but you can definitely see it and it's really pretty. Alright, we're going to do that same thing over here. Add that all over the lid. Now, I know I got some stuff out here. I'm going to be wiping that away in just a second. I just wanted to be as messy as possible with an eye look like this. I just feel like, it's going to be a little bit messy. I'm going to add a little bit more of that shade over here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add my NYX, this is the Pro Fix Stick Correcting Concealer in Fair, and the NYX Bear With Me Concealer Serum in Light. I'm going to add this right quick and, of course, clean up all of this mess right here, and then we'll move on to the lower lash line. I feel like some of that eyeshadow has already gotten underneath my lash line anyway, so there is some product there already. But I'm going to take a mixture of Road Trip and Unbothered. I'm going to take that back and forth on a Sigma E54. I'm going to tap into Road Trip once and then Unbothered once. And place that right along my lower lash line. I feel like this would definitely be a look that false eyelashes would probably be really pretty with, but I have false eyelashes, but no glue. I haven't had lash glue in probably over a year, so I don't have anything like that, but false eyelashes probably would be really pretty. Just going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, then I'm going to take the shade Brilliance, and I'm going to pop that right in here and kind of swoop that up into this part right in here. Just want a little pop of brightness. Okay, so I'm just going to film the rest of my makeup right quick off camera, and I am going to be applying the blush and highlighter in the palette as well. I'm going to do all that, and I'll be right back with my final thoughts. Okay, so here is this completed makeup look. I want to do something a little more smoky today, and I am wearing the blush and highlighter from the palette as well. And on my lips, I'm wearing the exact same thing that I wore in my first look. That is the Tower 28 one-liner in Check Me Out, the Flower Beauty lipstick in Spiced Petal, and then the e.l.f. Glow Reviver lip oil in Princess Cut. Okay, so now I have used all of the shades in the eyeshadow palette. I have used the blush and highlighter twice, 2 days in a row here. So let's talk about this palette, my final thoughts on it. It is an absolutely, I'm just going to hold it up one time because it is so reflective. It is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. It is, and I am happy that I have it in my collection. The packaging alone with the flowers, like I said, makes this palette worth it even more so to me because I just love beautiful packaging like that on eyeshadow palettes in particular. Now, do you need this eyeshadow palette? Of course not. It's a very neutral, warm eyeshadow palette. If you take away the fact that this was a very popular palette originally when it first came out years ago, it's simply a palette that Tarte probably releases all the time. Now, it's just a matter of whether or not you missed out on the palette, you want it, or maybe you had the original, you loved it so very much, and you want another one in your collection. All of that is completely up to you as to whether or not you think this palette is worth it. Now, as I'm filming this video today, I am not sure if the palette is still available or not, and I don't know if this is a permanent palette in their collection now or if they're just bringing it back for a limited time. I'm not sure about that, but just looking at the palette itself, the color story, it's nothing revolutionary. It's a very simple neutral eyeshadow palette. I do like it, and I am happy to have it in my collection. I think it's a beautiful eyeshadow palette. The shades blend out wonderfully. I didn't have any muddying yesterday when I wore them all day long. The blush and the highlighter lasted on my face all day. I didn't have any issues, and it creates really beautiful looks. So if you love neutral eyeshadow palettes, and this was a palette you were looking at and it was one you wanted to add in your collection, I don't think you'd be disappointed with it at all. I'm happy to have it in my collection. I am happy that after all these years, I finally got a chance to try this. I'm assuming this is the exact same palette. I don't believe they changed anything. I did see one comment somewhere that the names might be changed, but other than that, the shades are the exact same. But it's a stunning eyeshadow palette. It's Tarte's beautiful formula as always, so I am happy to have it. But I do hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, I hope you will please consider leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the bell icon so you are notified of all my future uploads, and all of these items will be listed and linked for you below. They are affiliate links, so if you click through and purchase, I do earn a small commission, and if you choose to do so, thank you so much for supporting me and my channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!